So it's been announced this week that lockdown is going to continue for a little bit longer. And it's got me thinking about freedom. Because in a sense we can feel, when we're locked down, we can feel restricted. We can feel like I'm limited. I'm being forced to stay inside. And of course it's with good reason, but we can still sort of feel limited and feel like we're being forced to stay somewhere and forced to go to different places and when we're allowed to go, etc. And it got me thinking about freedom. Now, freedom is, of course, a topic that we talk a lot about at Pesach, which was only just a few weeks ago. We're now in just the beginning of the sixth week of counting the Omer, so we're on our way from Pesach to Shavuot. And Pesach, we talk a lot about freedom. But freedom in Jewish thought is very much a journey. It's not a simple sort of, we went free. On the very day that we went free, we then began to count, or the very next day we began to count the Omer, as we continue to do today, all the way up until Shavuot. And at Shavuot, we accepted the Torah. We accepted upon ourselves, in a sense, a new master. Right? Someone else to give us different rules. So Pharaoh gave us rules, and now the Almighty gives us different rules. And one can wonder, are we still free? What exactly does freedom mean? And why would we want to swap one master for another? So in Shabbat Behar this week, at the very, very end of Behar, leading into our second Shabbat Behar-Bechukotai, the Torah tells us, reminds us of the fact that we are servants of the Almighty. Kili b'nei Yisrael avadim. We are all supposed to be servants of the Almighty. Avadai heim. We are servants of Him, as opposed to servants of anybody else. And this is said in the context of a Jewish slave and the fact that the Jewish slave has to go free. And perhaps slavery in the Torah is a topic for another time. But as I said, this concept of freedom and thinking about what it means to be a servant and why we seem to have swapped one master for another, how exactly does that all work? Well, the truth is that freedom is a funny thing, because we think of ourselves, even when we think of ourselves as free, the truth is that we're never fully free. Everybody in the world is restricted in some sense. So the classic restrictions, of course, people are financially restricted, people are restricted physically as to what we're able to do, what we're not able to do. We're restricted by the circumstances that we've created for ourselves. If we have a job, we can't just simply choose to go on holiday this week or next week, etc. Certainly now we're even less free in that sense. And so one really needs to consider at its core what exactly freedom means. So the way the Torah views freedom is not as an absolute, that one is either free or one is not free, but there are elements in which one is free, and we have to sort of work towards freeing ourselves from the shackles, not just, of course, of people like Pharaoh or tyrants and things like that, but from the shackles that tie us down in other ways as well. Everyone knows that there are only two things that are certain in life, and that is death and taxes. And so we'll start with those two as to how they tie us down and how we, in a sense, can become a little bit more free from them. So of course we fear death to an extent, or we worry about it. It's something that's on our mind, it's something that we think about. And what the Torah is teaching us is that when we are servants of the Almighty, when we recognize that there's somebody else in charge, of course that doesn't change the date or the length of the stay in this world per se, but what it does do is it removes that burden from upon us. It's not something for me to worry about. It's not something for me to be overly concerned with. I know that there's somebody else in charge. I know that the Almighty has a plan, and that as long as I'm following that plan, then I'm going to be here for the right amount of time in this world. And in a sense, it frees us from that fear, it frees us from that nervousness, while we still have to put in our effort to try and keep ourselves healthy and fulfill our lives as much as possible. The actual sort of core fear, hopefully, can move away, and we can become free from that sense of being limited by that. And the second thing, we'll focus on a famous Mishnah from Pirkei Avot, Ezahu Ashir, who is a wealthy person, Hasameach bechelko, one who is happy with what they have. No matter how much money a person has, a person can be financially constrained. The wealthiest person in the world still can't afford everything. They can afford a ridiculous amount, but there are always going to be limits as to what we can manage financially, down to you and I. Again, everybody has limited financially, and in that sense we're restricted. In that sense we're limited. In that sense, perhaps it's a lack of freedom. But what the Mishnah is telling us is that when we change our attitude, when we look at what not we can do, but what we require, hasameach bechelko, are we happy with what we have? And if we're happy with what we have, then all of a sudden we've changed it from being about what we want to what we need. And when we look at what we need, then we're ultimately as free as we possibly can be. These are just a couple of small examples that remind us that freedom is about the journey from Pesach to Shavuot, the journey from beginning our freedom to accepting upon ourselves a master who allows us to be in control, who wants us to be in control of how we feel, to be in control of how we act, to be in control of everything that we do. So while we're in lockdown and we may feel perhaps restricted, this is an opportunity to work on our freedom more than ever before, to unshackle ourselves not from what is without, but from what is within, to consider what it is that's holding us back from doing all the wonderful things, from achieving all the incredible things that we can in life, and an opportunity to ingrain within us some of the wonderful lessons that our Torah offers us. Shabbat Shalom.